Sometimes, the best stories in golf aren't found on tour. You'll find them at the back of the range. And now, your host, Ben Adelberg.
Welcome to the Back of the Range Golf Podcast. I am your host, Ben Adelberg. This is episode 76. Lots going on in the golf world right now. Brooks Koepka did it again. First, he goes back-to-back at the U.S. Open, now back-to-back at the PGA. Little shaky there at the end, but hey, check the scoreboard, folks. That's 4 majors under his belt before the age of 30. Incredible stuff. The NCAAs are ramping up as well. The ladies are taking center stage right now. The men follow. Best of luck to everyone competing down there in Arkansas. Kind of a quick intro this week because I'm getting ready to get out of town, get on a plane, head down to the Dominican Republic, and play all of the great golf courses at Casa de Campo. This has been on the list for quite some time. Finally getting down there to play the Teeth of the Dog, the Die 4. I want to see what this place is all about. I'll be taking lots of photos and videos. I'm really trying to get more of that posted on our social media channels, so stay tuned for that. I also have another golf trip planned the week after. I know what you all are thinking, back-to-back weeks. Don't you have a job? Well, yeah, I do. I'm a working stiff just like everyone else, but I got an absolutely insane invitation that I just could not turn down. Now, I can't tell you where it is because I don't want to jinx it, but I'll be posting pictures from there as well, so just hang tight, hold your breath, because between Casa de Campo and this next place, I am still shaking my head that this is real. So follow the Back of the Range Golf Podcast on social media. We're on Facebook, we're on Twitter, we're on YouTube, and Instagram is where a lot goes down. Follow us there at the Back of the Range Podcast. I always ask for reviews in Apple Podcasts. I can't thank you enough for everyone that has taken the time to do that. I know it takes some time to get in there and write something. I appreciate each and every one of you that has done so. It really does mean a lot. I love getting the feedback. So if you have some time, go ahead and do that. And hey, as always, take a snapshot, post it on your social media, tag us, and I'll shoot you some free swag. We have some stuff coming in, so make sure you do that. I love getting stuff out to the listeners so that you can put a golf towel on your bag or a hat or something. Let people know that you listen to the Back of the Range Golf Podcast. So our guest this week is another U.S. Mid-Amateur champion. In fact, it's the current one, Kevin O'Connell. This is a bit of a lengthy episode, but it's very interesting. It's very informative. We hit on everything from playing in the Masters, and I actually asked him a pretty tough question about that. What was harder for him, the first tee ball or telling close family members that you're out of tickets? I asked him what he's doing to put himself in the best spot possible to get picked for the 2019 Walker Cup team. How is he keeping his game sharp? We also debuted some of our Inside the Ropes listener questions. These questions were awesome. I threw them in at the very end, and we're going to keep on doing this segment because, as I've said in the past, this is your podcast as much as it is mine. So let's get started. Let's welcome the current United States Mid-Amateur champion, Kevin O'Connell, to the podcast. Kevin, welcome to the Back of the Range.
Ben, thanks a lot. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Well, it's kind of been a whirlwind for you this past year, and actually since last September, last October, when you kind of ran through the field at the U.S. Mid-Am and won that. We're going to hit into a lot of what you've been doing for the last year and preparing for, obviously, the U.S. Open coming up. I know you just got done with the Masters, but let's kind of dig in a little bit and make sure our listeners fully understand the little bit of the trajectory of your career. I know you played at the University of North Carolina, played all 4 years there, but can you kind of share with our listeners, how you got into the game of golf?
Yeah, of course. So, like a lot of guys probably, the key influencers for me were my father and a grandfather, both pretty good players and just avid golfers. And so, for me, it was probably around 2 or 3 years old. It was plastic clubs and playing the dog legs around the hallways in my house.
Nice.
And, it kind of morphed from there into going out with my dad and playing with his friends probably when I was 5 or 6 years old. That was my first time out actually on the golf course. Cut down clubs. Again, probably a pretty standard, beginning for me. And, when you pick up a game that young, it tends to just kind of, it's in your blood by the time you're, kind of a teenager. And so that was kind of how I got started. And it's just, it's the best game. I love being able to share it, with my family. And I think it's so cool too, because there's a group of guys that my dad plays a lot of golf with on the weekends back in Raleigh, North Carolina. And the age spans, 13, 14 years old to kind of, early 70s. And I'm just not sure there's another game where, the gap in age can be 13 to say 75 and everybody can be playing in the same group. It's pretty cool.
Yeah. Other than your dad, when you were growing up and playing the junior golf, playing casual games around the club, other than your dad, who's the most memorable character at the club you grew up at that kind of took you under his wing and kind of showed you the ropes, so to speak? Who's the character? I guess that's what I'm looking for. Who's the character that's like, oh my gosh, that's my crazy uncle at the club that I'm not related to, but yeah, that's my crazy uncle.
Our the club I played a lot of golf at before we moved when I started high school. It's called Wildwood Green Golf Club. It's in Raleigh, North Carolina, and there's been a little bit of a revolving door of head pros there, but probably from the time I was 10 years old until maybe 12 or 13, the head pro's name was Jason Cox, and Jason is now with the Carolinas Golf Association. But Jason was a great player, and he kind of had the time to come out and play with myself and some of the other juniors in the mornings, in the summertime when Mom would kind of drop me off. And, he's kind of the one who introduced me to, what it was like to play for a couple dollars out on the golf course. And, like I said, a really good player. I learned a lot from him, and he was definitely a little bit of a personality, for an 11-year-old playing with the head pro in the beginning. There was definitely, a little bit of nerves playing with such a good player and a guy like that. He was probably my introduction to playing with pros who would ask you to kind of move out of their through line and stuff like that.
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
I'd probably say Jason is that guy.
That's awesome to have that kind of an experience, and like I said, not having it be a parent, not having it be a relative, just the guy at the club that kind of shows you around. It's funny you mentioned through line, because there are times where I'm playing and it's amazing.
Right.
I'm going to let you explain a through line, just in case people are listening. They don't know what a through line is. Let's do a little service here and educate some people. So go ahead.
Yeah, you bet. So, it's one of two things, actually. It can be, let's say golfer A, has a putt of whatever length it is. You don't want to be standing past the hole on that same line that guy might be putting on. It can just be a distraction. And then part two of that is when you're finishing a hole, you want to do the best you can to make sure that where you stand is not going to be in a place where another player might miss his putt and then have to putt through that footprint or whatever it is that you might have done to the green. Now, that may not be as relevant now with the rule change. You can tap everything down, but it's just kind of a common courtesy and something that you kind of learn as you go.
Yep. No, absolutely. That's a great way of explaining it. As I said, you played 4 years at Chapel Hill, University of North Carolina, had great success there,
Sure.
Freshman of the year in the ACC conference. I love anytime I get a chance to talk to anyone that ever played college golf. I love to talk about the recruiting process they went through, or was it a foregone conclusion that they were going to play, Division I, what their experience was like. So, maybe you can share just a little bit about, your college golf experience. Was it a foregone conclusion that you were going to play college golf? When did it start entering your head? Just kind of things like that.
When I was growing up from probably 8 years old until I would say 13, I played pretty much all the sports, right? I mean, sure. I loved playing soccer, played baseball, played basketball. Basketball is probably definitely my second love. And around 13 is when I put a lot of those other sports, really all those other sports down and started to focus on golf as I, went from 8th grade into high school. And so during that same time, my family moved from Raleigh over to Cary, and Green Hope High School is where I played my high school golf. And we were a really good 4A public, high school, had a lot of good sports, golf definitely among those. We won 2 state championships as a team. I won the individual title as a senior. And, that experience was almost like a precursor to college. I mean, we had all 5 guys that went on to play Division I golf the following year.
Wow.
It's the same school where Brendan Todd came out of. He went on to play at Georgia, and obviously a winner on the PGA Tour. He and I did not cross paths during high school, but he kind of got that legacy, I guess, if you will, started at Green Hope. And it was run by or coached by David Allen, who definitely approached it, like a college golf coach would. I mean, we had workouts back in 2000 and, 4, 5, 6, 7 during high school. And I don't know if we were at the forefront of that, but I know at the time that was definitely uncommon. And so, there was that. That was a great experience. I think it definitely prepared me well for college golf. And as far as the recruiting process, I mentioned to you before, Wildwood Green was actually run by a couple of NC State, guys. And Chip Watson actually went on to be an assistant coach at NC State for several years before he started to focus on things at Lonnie Pool Golf Course, which is NC State's home course. And so, they were kind of in my ear from a pretty young age, having grown up at Wildwood, to come play for them at NC State. And so, I think from probably 7th grade, 8th grade, 9th grade, it was kind of in my mind that, NC State was where I was going to go play my college golf.
Yeah.
And as I continue to improve and play some national tournaments and have some success at that kind of level, as you can imagine, some other players stepped in, obviously North Carolina being one. I have an uncle that lives out near Los Angeles, and I spent some time out there visiting him and fell in love with that area. And so there were, UCLA was another school that, was one that was probably a little bit more of a pipe dream. Going all the way across the country would have been a big move. But, as a teenager, Los Angeles is kind of a cool place, especially when you're not from there.
Sure.
You just visit there, you can fall in love with it pretty easy. And so, that was another school that I had a lot of interest in going to. But, in the end, I would also throw Wake Forest in, storied program. Jerry Haas, I really liked him a lot. I would say those were kind of the 4 schools: NC State, Wake Forest, UCLA, and North Carolina were kind of the 4 schools that, that I really took a look at. Ultimately with Chapel Hill, like I said, a big hoops fan, I think that had a lot to do with it. They won a national championship in 2005 when I was being recruited by them, and I was able to, being only a half hour from campus, I was able to go over and take in some games. And, that was just, I really liked that aspect of it, being able to, go watch such a great basketball,
Sure.
Program play. That, it might sound a little different, but, for me, that I thought that was really cool. And, again, at that age, stuff like that, it can have an influence. And I would also add that, John Inman was my coach at UNC, and he was, he played probably a dozen years on the PGA Tour, won a couple events out there. And so, the combination of things just led me to go do that. I also thought, going to Chapel Hill would be, while it's only a half hour away, it would be a little bit of a, it would feel like I went off to college, instead of just kind of remaining, around the Raleigh and Cary area. So,
I mean, that's a normal college kid thing, or the normal high school kid thing. I want to go someplace where I'm gonna have fun at school. And
right.
So let me ask you this: you mentioned John Inman, PGA Tour veteran, winner on tour. Was part of your decision to go there immediately, or was the recruiting process set up in a way where immediately you were thinking, okay, I'm going to go here to get myself ready to turn professional, or was it still just, I just want to go play college golf. I love hoops. I love UNC. And
Right.
was that in your mind initially, or when did that start to take shape?
Yeah, it's a good question. Having played the game from such an early age and enjoyed some success on the national level as a junior and winning the state championship in high school, I was obviously a pretty good player. And, when I showed up at school, I had success right away. I was third team All-America, freshman of the year in the ACC. And so I would say during that freshman year, it went from, playing golf for a living is something that I would like to do. I'm not sure if I'm good enough to, I think I am good enough, and it definitely moved, to the forefront for me. And so the last 3 years of school definitely became about, working out the right way and doing all of the little things. And to answer your question, certainly, playing golf after school was definitely something that I began to focus on.
You mentioned all the little things that you
Sure.
need to do to become a professional. So
Yeah.
let's take the stuff on the golf course off the table, so to speak. What
Yeah.
are some of the little things you learned from Coach Inman, or even some of the little things you've learned along the way? We'll get into your foray into professional golf. I know you're a reinstated amateur at this time, of course, but, the little things that you learn, can you share maybe a couple of those?
A lot of my friends, in college were actually not on the golf team, and guys that I lived with. And, there's definitely plenty of kind of experiences on into 1 or 2 a.m. that they might have had that, I did not.
I don't know what you're talking about. Can you explain that in detail? Because I'm not sure. Because I went to sleep at 10 o'clock every night when I was in college.
I bet.
Yeah, I had a lot of egg whites in the morning at 6 a.m.
There you go.
Yeah, hit the gym and really, I drank a lot of Diet Coke and tomato juice. So can you just?
Okay.
I'm just kidding, but you can go into. You can give an example.
Yeah.
All right. What's the best party that you heard about that you didn't get to go to?
Oh man, the Deke House at UNC is pretty legendary. They, I had, some friends that were in the house, and then obviously some of the guys I lived with were pretty good friends with some of those guys, and they probably had the best frat house on campus, and definitely had some of the most legendary parties. I was at the house actually for the 2009 national championship game. It was just kind of typical college stuff, right? But it spilled out onto Franklin Street after we won, and there's definitely some pretty classic images of some kids climbing up some, power poles and stuff like that. I think that night definitely sticks out the most for me.
Nice. So you learned a little bit about that, but like some of the other things you learned in college.
Yeah, we deviated there.
Yeah, we did. That's okay. These things happen here. Hey, we're at the back of the range. Things get weird, so it's totally fine. No, but yeah, we'll bring it on back to
okay.
What did you do, or what things did you learn, off the golf course to help you become a professional?
Yeah, I'll be the first to admit, I firsthand got to see kind of the first class facilities that exist at, in Chapel Hill. That as far as the staff goes that was put together for our golf program, we had access to everything you could need in terms of trainers. And I tried to take advantage of that. At that age, it can be a little tough to kind of see how important that is. But as I went through school and got closer to, graduating and wanting to go out and play professional golf, it became really important to kind of take care of your body, not just working out, but also, decisions you make in terms of how you eat, particularly on the road. It can be really tough. You're playing, oftentimes it's 36 holes or 36 whole days in college, and you might have a little bit of schoolwork that you have to take care of as well. It can be easy to just, tell coach you want to run through the McDonald's drive-through because you don't have any time. But, it's stuff like that. It's making the hard decisions to try to eat a little bit better, even though it might take a little bit more time. And, I think it's just when I talk about the little things, it's that stuff, right? It's doing the best you can to eat as well as you can, as often as you can. It's taking care of your body. It's stretching. It's trying to put on a little bit of muscle, and that stuff just, it's going the extra mile, really, is all it is. It's a lot easier to not do that stuff. And you might even in the intermediate, play just as well. But I think in the long term, you start to see the results of making some of those good decisions.
So you wrap up your career at North Carolina. You're getting prepared to go into the professional ranks. I know that you went and played a little bit on the mini tours, the eGolf Tour, in North Carolina. Right. They play a lot of South Carolina, Georgia, all over the place. But so sure. you graduate in 2011. Did you go right into it then, or kind of what was the arc or the start of everything?
Yeah, so I got done in 2011. Went to Q school that fall. At the time, I think 2011, I could be wrong, but I want to say that was the final year that you could cruise through Q school and actually get a PGA Tour card.
That sounds about right. Yeah.
Yeah. And, unfortunately, that didn't work out. In fact, I went to Q school 3 times and never did make it past first stage. It was, I never missed by more than 2. It was like missed by 1, 2, and 1, yeah, I mean, obviously that was disappointing and heartbreaking to kind of feel like you prepare all year, for one series of kind of qualifying tournaments. And when it doesn't work out, you really got to search around for money and places to play and places to kind of stay sharp for that period the next year. When you're kind of in that kind of pipeline of players, it's just, you're not playing for a ton of money if you're not on the web.com or PGA Tour. And you're really just trying to do the best you can to keep your game in order for the qualifying school. And so, 2011, 12, and 13 are the years that, I went to Q school and, like I said, never made it past first stage. And it definitely got frustrating. And so Lee Bedford was a friend of mine from Cary, and he actually played his college golf at Wake Forest and was a really, really good player. I know he was an All-American multiple times during school. And unlike me, he came out of school in 2012 and he got out onto the web.com tour right away. And the web.com tour at that time played 4 out of their first 6 events down in South America. And, I think he probably wanted somebody that he was somewhat close to that could go down there and, he could lean on instead of getting a guy that didn't speak English, et cetera, on his bag. And so I went down there with him and kind of shared those experiences with him and had a chance for the first time kind of on a week in, week out basis to really kind of, see golf played at that level.
Yeah.
And in the beginning of that year, it was in my mind that I actually was going to stop playing and I was just going to kind of see where it went with Lee in terms of being his caddy. And just 6 weeks in, I kind of, it definitely lit a fire, in me. I felt like between what I learned watching those guys and just kind of the drive that I felt like I still had, I wanted to go back out and play a schedule on the E-Tour and play some Monday qualifiers and go to Q school again. And so that's what I did. I caddied for him, had a great time, learned a lot, and went to Q school that fall. And unfortunately, again, I was at Pine Wild in Pinehurst for my first stage, and I missed getting through by 1 shot. And when you look back on that stuff, it's interesting to kind of think about where things, how things might have been different, right? If I had kind of been 1 shot better and gone on the second stage,
of course.
It's just may not be the where I'm at now.
Well, and the thing too about this game of golf is, as you well know, 1 shot, 2 shots makes just the entire difference in a career. It's life changing. And I mean, when you're out there caddying, are you looking at these guys and wanting to get back into it because you're saying, oh, hell, I'm better than these guys, or I'm just as good as these guys. I need to keep doing this because it's just a stroke here and there. That's all it is.
Well, it's so funny that you say it that way. I'll never forget. I was in Panama with Lee, and the hotel is kind of upstairs at a casino there that a lot of the players stay at. And one of the guys, Andrew Loop, who's my age, was playing on the Web.com tour at the time. We're just kind of sitting down there at the blackjack table, and we were talking about it. And he's like, I think it was in 2011 or 2012, similar to me. He missed getting through a stage. I can't remember which one it was. By one shot, he said he missed somewhat of a short putt on his final hole, and it ended up that that cost him getting through. And when he was deciding kind of what to do, he kind of thought to himself, am I any worse of a player because I didn't make that putt? Is that a reason to not kind of keep playing? And,
right.
His kind of answer obviously was no, I'm no different player if I miss or make that putt, really. And that's kind of stuck with me, not just at that time, but even to now. It's like it's got to be a bigger reason, in my opinion, to kind of stop playing competitive golf than maybe a shot here or a shot there, because that's not doesn't speak to how good or bad of a player you are.
Interesting that you put it that way, because that all kind of comes down to being mentally prepared for the ups and downs, and knowing how to shake off just the you miss a 2-footer. Everyone misses a 2-footer. Tiger Woods
right.
can miss a 2-footer. That doesn't mean that's a great point.
Yeah.
So you've done Q School 3 times. You've been unsuccessful. You then go to the process of getting your amateur status back. So when did your mindset change from, hey, I'm just as good, I'm going to keep doing this? When did you decide that you wanted to kind of take a break from it, but also still keep playing golf, so to speak?
I'll kind of start by just describing my thought process in terms of stepping away from pursuing it professionally. And
not to cut you off, but you can step away from it and still be a pro, where you can go play in the occasional state open that you want to go play in, and hey, if you make a check, you make a check, but you step away and then say, I want to go play an amateur golf.
Yeah, no. So what really what contributed to that decision for me is however you look at it, the time that I came through college golf and went out and played professionally early on, some of the guys that were coming through at the same time are guys like Ricky Fowler and Cameron Tringali and Jamie Lovemark and Webb Simpson. A lot of these guys that I was lucky to kind of come up and play a lot of my golf against. And, I saw firsthand how good those guys were. And those are guys that had success pretty much right away in terms of getting out onto the PGA Tour and playing well out there. And I thought to myself, these guys, there is a gap between where I'm at and where those guys are at, not just professionally, but from an actual playing standpoint. And when I thought about it that way, it made the decision. It's a difficult decision when it's what you want to do your whole life, but at the same time, there's a reality to it. And so I kind of use those guys as an example for myself in terms of deciding to kind of step away. I thought, those guys are a lot better than I am, and there's a reason why they're where they are, and I haven't quite gotten there. And so that's sort of what contributed to me deciding to step away. And so, that time is 2014. And, like I said, I decided to stop, and I got really lucky. I got a great job in Chapel Hill with a great group of guys, an investment firm there. And it really allowed me for a year or two to kind of take my mind off of it completely. I was able to dive in, and I did some really kind of interesting work there at the firm. And, but at the same time, after a couple of years, some time went by. I hadn't played any tournament golf. That was the first time since I could really remember, that I had gone 12, 18, 24 months without teeing up in a golf tournament. And I missed it. I missed it a lot. And so just did a little research on kind of what it would take to get my amateur status back. My thought was, honestly, Ben, at the time, it was, man, I could stay here and work here for the rest of my career. I liked it that much, and just play a handful of, tournaments a year and just kind of enjoy life that way. And so I applied in 2015, got my amateur status back, and 2016 started to play some local stuff and qualified for the mid amateur, the one that Stewart won up in Pennsylvania. And I think that tournament probably, it playing a USGA event again for the first time in several years. It just it made me want to do it again on a little bit more serious level. And in 2017, I actually switched jobs. I went and worked for Parsons Extreme Golf PXG, and it allowed me a little bit more time to work on my game, and there was a little bit more vacation time as well, so I could play a few more events. And
sure,
that's how that kind of morphs from completely stepping away and doing the career thing to maybe playing a little bit more, and that got my feet wet again, and I started to have some success, and actually felt like my game improved over that time without even working on it full time.
Now you mentioned the job. You mentioned working in wealth management and then transitioning to PXG.
Yeah.
And I'm assuming at PXG you're traveling to country clubs doing kind of demo days. Is that kind of what you're doing?
Yeah, the setup is a little different at PXG. You're right. I definitely. So my territory was North Carolina and Virginia, and they kind of outfit you with a van, and like you said, for the most part, you're going around participating at demo days and that kind of thing. But where they vary a little bit is we also were kind of calling on clubs and asking them if we could come out and set up just individually, and where we would be the only one there.
Right.
And we took appointments for folks that were interested in actually being fit for the stuff. And so that's more what it was. It was kind of working one-on-one with guys that were kind of interested in the brand new golf company that had a lot of noise around it, and
Sure.
They just wanted to see what it was about. And so it was really cool. I felt like obviously had a lot of knowledge in that area. And so it was a pretty easy transition for me, in terms of the work. It really didn't feel a whole lot like work, to be honest with you. And I actually knew a lot of the pros I was calling on. And so it was a lot of fun. I had a lot of fun doing that.
So you had your jobs, you got the wealth manager, you're working for PXG, you're getting back into amateur golf, playing in USGA events. So now we're getting to 2018, and it's such a fascinating year because I'm assuming it started with the intention of going back to play professionally again, or at some point that became the plan. When did that start in 2018, and who helped you actually talk you into doing it?
Ooh, what a kind of a loaded. So
yeah, of course, it's a loaded question, man.
Yeah, no, yeah. So I made the transition from the wealth management gig to PXG in March of 2017, and was at PXG for just over a year. And it was really the spring last year, 2018, where I felt like I had played in enough tournaments and saw some things from my game. I don't have any kids. I am married, but that was definitely a part of the discussion. It was like, hey, look, I'm 29 years old. I don't necessarily have anything, tying me down. I've got the time here if I want kind of to make another run at this. And so everybody was supportive, from my family from that standpoint. And in April, I left PXG, and the idea was, I was lucky. Like I said, I had played, some good golf, and it allowed me to kind of build a schedule, an amateur schedule, where I was going to be able to play, call it 8 to 10 tournaments throughout the summer. And I felt like that was enough to to get my game where I wanted to get it for Q school. And that was the plan. And so, I had some good success. I won in June at the Monroe Invitational. It's a pretty good amateur tournament up in New York. And that was a huge confidence boost, and qualified for the U.S. Amateur, played that out at Pebble Beach, which was just awesome. Unfortunately, I didn't play as well as I would have liked there, but it was just a great learning experience. And I was able to apply it, right away at the next tournament at the Mid-Amateur, and that just, needless to say, that really changed everything winning there.
Oh, of course. So the thing I was actually pivoting towards is that did your wife have any hand in motivating you or in kind of talking you into playing professionally?
She didn't talk me into it. That was definitely kind of something I approached her with. But,
okay.
Anytime your wife, doesn't, there's like zero pushback or resistance at all. That might as well be talking you into it.
Well, I'm just thinking like most of us amateurs have to, most amateurs have to talk the wife into letting you go play on the weekend with your buddies.
Right.
And you're trying to sell the wife on the idea of you like playing professional golf again.
I know.
Do you remember the initial conversation of when that happened?
Yeah, I would say initial conversations, plural. It's not like I just, it definitely took, a little bit of effort on my part. But
okay.
like I said, my wife and I, Michelle, we've been together for a really long time. And so she's kind of been a part of this whole ride, this whole journey, if you will.
So she's a golf wife.
She's a golf wife, and certainly well aware of kind of my aspirations. So, and I think too, like I mentioned before, we didn't have any kids, and we're still somewhat young, and I think she understood that if it's something that you want to do, you have the time, and I've got no real issues with it. In fact, I think it'll be a good experience for you to just kind of go out and try it again, and that way you can always say you did it.
The wife of the U.S. Mid-Amateur champion lets him go play golf. So, I mean, come on, Kevin O'Connell's wife says it's okay to go play, I don't know if that.
Hey, if it'll help out, please.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, of course. So you have this great 2018, and you're getting ready for the U.S. Mid-Am. I mean, obviously, you qualify, but you don't know how it's going to go. You know how that tournament is. You can play great and make match play and just run into a buzzsaw and you're out. Yeah, so yep. that thing's just but your plan was to go to European Tour Q school, or was it
correct?
Okay,
that's correct. Yep.
So your plan is to go to that, and I believe you already have your travel plans all set up, so you're all set to go. But you just got to play. No
question.
But you just got to play the U.S. Mid-Am. Once that's done, then you're going.
I won the Mid-Am. I think the day of the week I won it on was Thursday, and I was set. My first stage was over just outside Paris, France, and I was set to leave the following Thursday, 7 days later. So that was all set. Everything was kind of paid for and obviously set up. Months in advance of that. So that was the plan.
And, you win the U.S. Mid-Am. I'm not going to go through. I know you had a lot of close matches. I know you had a great final against Brett Boner. He was a local guy, beat him in the 36-hole final. But you got the trophy. You do the media, you do the press. I'm sure that the questions are about, how special is it going to be playing Augusta? And did everyone kind of know your situation that was interviewing you right after the tournament, or was that something they really didn't know about?
So they held kind of a brief one for TV,
right.
On the 15th green, where the match ended, and Brett quickly did that interview, and he actually asked me about it. So to answer your question, yeah, I think a lot of the media there was definitely aware of that plan. But it's one of those things where when there's a possible invitation to the Masters and an exemption into the U.S. Open, those are tournaments, whether you're a pro or an amateur, that you're gonna play in. No matter, sure. You're gonna do what you got to do, and so the decision to kind of bypass Q school and turn pro was a pretty easy one at that point.
Yeah. No, you gotta definitely do that. I mean, obviously, people that know golf, people that follow golf, know about Colt Knost, who had
Yep.
basically the same exemptions, and he passed and turned pro immediately. I mean, that I guess that's the immediate thought of just about anyone in that situation. Were there other pros or other amateurs that reached out to you, or you reached out to just for advice, or not necessarily on, should I stay an amateur and take advantage of the benefits of this victory, but were there people
Yep.
that talked to you or people that you reached out to about this?
Well, yeah, certainly. I would also add, while the decision was easy because of what the win came with in terms of the Masters and the U.S. Open, and also a lot of the other really neat
Oh,
invitational
of
kind of
course.
mid-amateur tournaments. I mean, it comes with so much, and it was an easy decision from that standpoint. But at the same time, as I mentioned, I stopped work altogether in early 2018 with the goal in mind that I was going to go over and try to go through Q school in Europe. And it's like, you work all year for that, and you're obviously my game was peaking right at that time, exactly the way I would have tried to draw it up. And so from that standpoint, to kind of pull the plug on the ultimate goal was it from that standpoint was a little bit difficult, because my game was in a good spot, which is exactly what I wanted. But in terms of reaching out to some guys, the first guy that I called and we had a number of conversations is Scott Harvey. Scott's a really good fellow mid-amateur from North Carolina, and he's obviously gone through everything I've gone through, and
Sure.
just had a lot of success. Actually, he's had a pretty storied amateur career himself. And so he was kind of the first guy. He was the one that I knew best. And so, he kind of held my hand actually through a lot of the winter, just in preparation for this year.
Yeah, no, he was a previous guest, as you know, on the podcast, and
Right.
yeah, I mean, Walker Cupper, U.S. mid, and yeah, he's
Whole thing.
whole thing.
Yep.
Big fan of Cracker Barrel too. You'll have to ask him about that. So big fan of Cracker Barrel. But
Okay.
oh yeah, just ask him about Mama's pancakes. That's
All
his
right.
thing apparently. Um, but you're going to stay amateur. You're getting ready for the Masters. You're preparing for this. What are some of the things that you had to do that you felt was the best preparation to play in the Masters? Obviously, mid amateurs have had limited success. I know Stu made the cut, but ultimately it's been limited success. What are some of the things that maybe that Harvey told you that you tried to do to get yourself as prepared as possible?
It's a good question. So the first thing is when it took about probably 3 or 4 weeks to receive the first communication from Augusta, just letting me know that I was going to be invited, and it laid out kind of some guidelines in terms of what sort of practice or the access I was going to have to Augusta National in preparation for the tournament. So they allow obviously you to go up and make some trips early. And so, Scott's advice was, you want to play that golf course as much as you possibly can. And second to that, the golf course as you approach April, it starts to play a little bit more like it will during the tournament. And so it can be really hard. I had never played Augusta National before. And so when when they let you know that you can kind of go out there and start playing, it's hard
Sure.
not to just be out there every day in October.
Of course, yeah.
But so, what I did is I went up there as much as I could. I had a chance to play, with a member or two, and it's one of those courses where it's obviously very long. And so you've got to drive the ball well. And so that after my initial visit, that became, kind of the main thing. It was like, what do I need to do to kind of, if I can get a little longer off the tee, that was definitely something I started to work on as far as in my game. But just getting comfortable with playing Augusta National, it's similar to Pebble Beach in that it's hard not to just, be looking around and kind of daydreaming while you're out there. And you got to get over that at some point if you want to be able to compete. So I felt like I did a pretty good job of playing a lot of practice rounds. And really, aside from that, it was just, the greens are what they are. Yes, they're fast, they're undulating, but when you've gotten to a certain level, you've played plenty of championship courses where the greens are rolling fast and they're difficult. It was really just the working on the driver. I thought that was really important, and getting comfortable with the golf course. Those are kind of the two main things that I focused on.
And then obviously you get there, preparing for it when there's really no galleries around is one thing, but then you get on site, you're on campus, and it's Masters Week.
Right.
It had to just hit you like just a ton of bricks. Like, oh God, wait a minute. I was just here a couple months ago.
Right.
And now what is this?
Right. Yeah. That's a good point. And I'll be honest too. I'd be curious. I should go back and listen to some of the other guys and their experience. But when the actual tournament rounds came around, you're in a tournament and you're focused on what you're doing. And for the most part, the patrons are just sort of background. You notice them, but they're not too much of a distraction. The thing that took me the most getting used to is playing with guys that are top 50 in the world, guys that, I watch a lot of golf, and it was kind of the first time playing day in and day out with those guys. And that just took a little bit of getting used to, I think, more so than kind of all the commotion of having thousands of people around.
The guy you played with, that was like, oh man, that's a different level. And
yeah.
Actually, it brings me up. I'm glad you mentioned that, because that brings a really interesting thing. It's a career amateur or someone that does not have aspirations to turn professional. You were kind of different than maybe the Stuart Hagestads or the Scott Harveys that, hey,
right.
This is great. I made it and I'm playing in the Masters, but I'm not turning pro no matter what happens this weekend.
Sure.
You know that you're about to get back into playing professional, and you have your front row center with these guys that are where you want to be.
Sure.
Did it give you pause, or like, wait a minute, I got to go I got to play against this guy?
There was definitely some of that. At the same time, I would say I was pleasantly surprised. There's a lot of work to be done, but the takeaway for me was definitely it is possible. It would have, obviously been discouraging if I came away and thought to myself, look, that level is just not, it's not achievable. And it's going to have to be my version of it. I'm not going to hit it over the bunker on one at Augusta, but,
right.
Like I said, my version of it, I think it is possible. And so, but the guys that I had a chance to play with so many different guys in the practice rounds. I showed up on Saturday the week before, and so over the course of 5 days, I probably played with at least 10 or 12 guys. And the thing that struck me is
you can name drop here. I'll pick those names up for you. Go ahead, drop them.
Oh man, well, by far my favorite guy I got to play with was Kevin Kisner. He is the man. And you talk about not missing a shot and through the bag. Like, that guy doesn't miss a shot. He's a good chipper. He's a good putter. There's no wonder. And when I played with him 7 days earlier, he had just won the match play, and it's like,
yeah.
You're going from playing with your buddies back at home to playing with the guy that you just watched win the match play, in Austin. It's just, it just took some getting used to.
Well, and I would imagine, though, that's a perfect guy for you to play with, because Kisner's not one of the longest guys on tour by any stretch of the imagination.
Right.
And, I'm guessing that's better for you than to play with Koepka or,
right.
Or Rory or someone like that you're
sure.
like, good God, this guy's just
right.
So
a beast. Yeah.
Yeah, I was exactly right. I was just going to say that guy's a beast. So you're playing with Kisner. Did you bring him? Did you bring him just like some Copenhagen just to kind of butter him up, or like no? Or
no? So he and I played 9 on Sunday, and that was cool because obviously no patrons were there. It was just myself, him, Michael Kim joined us as well,
nice.
And then my wife walked along with us, which was really cool. And he was really nice to her too, which he just all around was such a good dude. And he was also really helpful. I think that was either his second or third Masters. And so he had notes in his yardage book and was probably the most open about, sharing his thoughts and opinions on where to miss it and clubs to hit and where the wind can switch and little things like that. I just got so much out of playing with him. And you're absolutely right. Playing with a guy that by tour standards is of kind of average to maybe a little above average length was helpful. It was helpful to see how a guy like that moves around Augusta National.
Yeah, because it's not going to help you if you see some guy carrying at 320. You're like, well, that doesn't help me. You're playing,
right?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, cool to see. Kind of to some extent.
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, cool to watch. We're like, all right, I don't need to watch that freak show. That's not helping me at all. So you play the Masters, you miss the cut, you shoot 77, 71. I know you picked up an eagle, so you picked up some hardware there. I know that your wife was on the bag for the par 3 contest. I've spoken to numerous U.S. Mid-Am champs that have stayed in the Crow's Nest, and it's such a really childish question to ask, but well, that's me, so we're just going to do it anyway. So you're in the Crow's Nest, you're around all this memorabilia, you've stayed in dumpy hotels in your mini tour days. Everyone's guilty of maybe snagging a bottle of shampoo or snagging a towel or snagging something out of a hotel. I know you didn't snag anything out of the Crow's Nest, but when you're looking around and seeing all the memorabilia on the walls, what looked like something that would be perfect in your den that would get maybe a new home?
Probably a little trash can. They got these, little, I don't know. It's probably like a 10 by 12 type trash can with the Augusta National Golf Club logo on it. I thought that would have been kind of cool.
Yeah, of course. Nice. Well, and for the record, you did not lift anything from Augusta National. Now, Harvey told me that. No, he didn't, but he told me that he was up there with Corey Connors, and it was like Monday night, and there was nobody around, and he went downstairs and got a case of Coors Light, and they just drank beer and told stories all night.
That's cool.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, are you that bold to do something like that?
We got so there were 4 of us that night up there.
And
Ortiz was up there.
Okay.
Yeah, Ortiz, Hovland, myself, and the Asia Pacific Amateur champion was there, and he didn't really speak much English, but I mean, obviously, when we got done with the amateur dinner, they let you out reasonably early, probably around 9 o'clock, and so we had some time to just sit up there and take it all in together. Shared some stories about who we had played with, and just our thoughts on the golf course and what it was like to be there, and a couple of us had a drink, and it was just, it's one of those, it's a couple hour experience that, you're probably never going to get again. And you kind of dream about it your whole life. And, just really cool. And I only stayed there that one night, as I think most of us did.
Yeah.
But it just, it was phenomenal. I will say I really didn't get a whole lot of sleep that night. It's like, how do you sleep in the Crow's Nest,
Yeah. Well, it is kind of tight quarters, but I bet you're all just kind of staring at each other, just like, can you believe this? I mean, like, what's happening right now?
That's exactly the feeling. Like, no matter how, in Victor's case, he's such a good player and is probably going to go on to have a lot of success. But even for a guy like that, it's just one of those things, it's hard not to be, to kind of be in that mindset like you just described.
So you enjoy the Masters experience. Now that your year is going to be a lot different because you're, I'm guessing, trying to figure out your 2019 calendar that puts you in the best position to possibly make the Walker Cup team.
Yep, no question.
So you got the USAM, you got the US Open on your list. I know you just played the Coleman, had a really good finish. I believe T3 at the Coleman down at Seminole.
Yep.
Yeah.
So that was a couple weeks ago.
Yeah. So you got this great. Now, what's your calendar look like for the rest of the year, and how have you set it up?
Obviously you want to. Whether it was a Walker Cup year or not, the ability to kind of play a lot of the elite amateur tournaments is definitely something that I look forward to, and so I'm going to play quite a bit. I'm going to I'll just kind of list them out. So I'll
Go
get a
ahead.
little bit of what it's like actually to, some of these guys that you see play week in and week out, starting at the U.S. Open. I'll play the U.S. Open and fly straight from there to the Northeast Amateur, which is in Rhode Island, and then fly straight from there down to Pinehurst and play in the North and South. And so that's 3 weeks right in a row. I was actually talking to Matt Parziali at the Coleman about that, and he was like, man, you get down to the North and South, because he did exactly that last year. And, it's 95 degrees and humid, and he was like, I got out there for my first stroke play round, and my body just almost kind of gave out on me, between the heat and the travel. We're just not used to that. And so, I look forward to giving that a shot. And then I'll have a couple weeks. I'll play the Players Amateur in Hilton Head, and then I'll go back up and play the Porter Cup. It's one of my favorite tournaments up in Niagara Falls, and then the Western Amateur, and then the U.S. Amateur. And so that'll kind of culminate the summer schedule. And at that point, we'll just hope we've played well enough to make Captain Crosby's team. That would just be another experience of a lifetime.
And you were at the practice session in South Florida around December of last year. So you played Seminole, you played Bears Club and all the other courses, and you got you're surrounded by. I know you had Stu there, but you're also surrounded by all these college kids. Is there a message that you received from the USGA or from Captain Crosby directly assigned to maybe you and Stu as, here's what, we'd like to have a mid-am on the team. There's going to be a mid-am on the team. Here's kind of a direction that you should go in to put yourself in the best position, because you don't have as many opportunities perhaps to pick up the points that like a college player would.
Excellent point. So no kind of direct message from the USGA or captain, but I think, I don't know exactly, how I got this information, probably from Stu or possibly just in pieces from some other guys. I know Scott talked to me a little bit about this, but everybody's kind of said, if your goal is to make that team, you gotta skip maybe some of the mid-am tournaments and go play the Northeast, go play the Western Amateur. You got to do the best you can to go play against the other college age kids that are trying to make the team, because that's what they want to see. They want to see how you stack up against those guys, because we're going over there to play against 18 to 22-year-old guys. And so like I said, though, no, it's not like Captain came up and said, look, I kind of want to see you play in these tournaments. It's more so just through some other guys. That's what they've said. But there's no question that you want to play the big events and you want to play well in them, just like any other level.
Of course, yeah. How are you balancing, so are you working this year, or kind of, I guess it's kind of a unique situation, that you have to take this opportunity to go do these things. It's kind of not to say it's a once in a lifetime, but it's almost once in a lifetime year for you.
No question, it is.
So what's the dynamic? I mean, are you working? Are you just kind of taking a leave? Are you?
So taking this year completely off, actually similar to last year. It's just, Ben, it's I just listed off probably 8 or 9 tournaments, and they're not really spaced out. So to entertain a job is pretty much impossible. So I made a decision after I won the Mid-Am. It's like, if I can just get enough support from my family, which luckily I have, I just want to do the best I can to enjoy 2019. And so that's what I'm doing. I'm just really trying to enjoy the golf. I love playing, love competing. And so no job for this year, just going around playing a lot of great golf against a lot of great competition and really having fun with it.
And you're not in North Carolina right now, so you've set up home base at TPC Sawgrass to work on your game and get ready for that. So, I mean, that's ground zero for PGA Tour players. I mean, they obviously are working on their game out there. I'm sure you've seen VJ out there. He's probably out there right now, I would imagine. But who are some of the pros that you've run into there that you've gotten to know that have maybe been able to give you a little bit of advice or talk you through the process of going down this great year and this great experience you're going to have?
Billy Horschel and I have kind of crossed paths a couple times leading up to the Masters. We chatted a little bit about it, but As far as those guys, so there's at TPC Sawgrass, there's a back end to the range where those guys kind of practice. And so I don't have access to the back, obviously, as an amateur. And so you really don't interact with those guys too much unless you're really good friends with them. I've got some buddies that play web.com golf, and I go out and play with them some. And so more so those guys that I've gotten to know. But another guy that I've gotten to meet a little bit this winter, actually down in Bradenton, Florida, is Paul Azinger. And I've got a mutual friend that's friends with Paul, and we've gone out and played some golf, and that's just been a blast. I had never met Paul before,
Sure.
Just a couple months ago. And so, obviously he's a little older. He doesn't maybe play quite as well as he did when he was in his prime, but still can get it around and make some birdies. And you can definitely pick his brain about short game stuff, and he's willing to share, and just an incredible personality, just in general. He's been a lot of fun to play with. And, Paul's pretty good friends with a guy named Parker McLaughlin. And
oh yeah, absolutely.
We've gone out and played some games with the two of them. And so that's been a lot of fun too.
That's great experience you're getting right there. And hell, I mean, any questions that you have for them, I mean, where else are you going to go? I mean, Zinger's Zinger's the man. So
you got it.
As you know, we kind of opened things up to a lot of our listeners for this interview. They submitted some questions that they wanted to ask and kind of get your feedback on, your Otto Walker Cup shortlist, your U.S. Mid-Amateur champion, you're balancing life. I know you've taken the year off, but you're balancing a lot of different things, and I'm sure you can give some great insights. So,
great.
Got a couple listeners that are pretty active on our Instagram page, and our Instagram is the Back of the Range podcast for people listening that have not subscribed yet. So go ahead and do that. But one of our guys, Stefan, he had a question. How do you channel? And I love this question because this could be at any level. So he wants to know, like, how do you get yourself into a positive mindset going into a match against a friend or maybe a frenemy, so to speak? But anyway, going against a friend who's a really good player and still kind of remain connected to your own game plan and your own, your own way of managing yourself around the course. Because apparently he looks like he was in a local qualifier for a mid-am, or it was against one of his buddies, and he had a tough time. So I guess to recap the question, how do you get yourself in the right mindset to play against someone that in a tournament round?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. And I would say, that guy's definitely not alone in that. I think even at the upper echelons of the game, these guys to some degree struggle with that. And I think a lot of it too is dependent on your personality. But for me, I think it's going to sound cliche, but you just have to kind of go. You realize that if you're with a buddy or even somebody that you've played a lot of golf with, and they're a good player, you kind of have to go into it knowing that it's not going to be a typical round of golf, and that you may not be able to just kind of go about your business like you normally would. And so I think, not battling that is important. Understanding that there may be a little bit more chatting and just, again, not fighting that is kind of how I go about it. I'm not somebody that is talking in between shots all that frequently, but when I am playing with somebody that I know, instead of the whole time feeling like I'm being a jerk, I understand that there's going to be a little bit more chatting, and it might be a little bit lighter atmosphere, and that's okay. I think you just don't want it to become a distraction that you feel like you're being a jerk by being quiet.
Sure.
So my approach is just understanding it's not going to be kind of a typical round of golf, and that's okay. Just try not to kind of fight that. Just go with the flow. It's not going to detract from how you play. And then I would add too, obviously, the more experience with that you have, you'll get better at it. I mean, at this point, I've gotten plenty of pairings with guys that I know are extremely good players that I don't know that well, and I've just kind of learned from experience on that front. And then as far as playing some matches or even getting pairings with guys that I know really well, it's definitely taken a couple experiences, getting used to maybe talking a little bit more, and not being quite as focused as I normally would. I just think try not to fight it would be my advice.
Okay. No, that's perfect. That's perfect. Another listener, my buddy Don, he wants to know what advice would you give a kind of upper level mid-am, whether it's a state level, national level, and upper level mid-am. They want to keep their game sharp. They want to compete at the high level, but they got to juggle the family. They got to juggle the full-time career. What advice do you give to someone at that level? And I guess that is the ultimate mid-am question. Like, how do I play the best golf possible and still keep my responsibilities and keep everything in check?
Yeah, I think so. And this is, I would say I'm going to filter my answer kind of. I've asked some of the other guys this question.
Sure.
That are actually in that boat, and kind of the overwhelming majority of those guys would tell you, you really have to understand, because you've got limited time to kind of work on your game. That's just the reality of it. And so, you may be a good ball striker, and so therefore it's fun to go out there and hit balls, and that really may not be doing a whole lot for your game. Or you might be a really good putter, and so it's fun to go out and have a lot of putting contests. I think what I've heard is, really understand where kind of your weaknesses are, and even though you've got limited time and it may not be as fun to work on what you're not as good at, you just have to kind of have the discipline to work on your short game if that's where you struggle, or work on your driver on the range if that's where you struggle, et cetera. And then the other thing too is nothing replaces tournament golf. And so if you don't necessarily have the time or the freedom to go out and play 3 or 4 round tournaments, do the best you can while you're at home to try to mimic what it's like to play in a tournament. If it's whatever it is that makes you a little bit uncomfortable, whether it's playing with better players at your club, or just things like that. You want to try to do the best you can to mimic tournament golf, because ultimately that's where you find out where your game's really at.
Yeah, no, you got to get out there and play and compete. And, you can hit, like you said, you can hit balls all you want to, do all the drills, but you got to know what it feels like when you got to make a 6-footer and you're nervous.
That's where you learn.
Yeah, absolutely. We had another question. This is actually from a former guest. So, former guest, this is a long one, and this is one where, we'll see where this one goes.
Okay.
So, former guest on the podcast, Greg O'Mahony. He played the mini tours. He did Monday into the Honda. He's played all over the world. We were talking about, ex-pros getting their amateur status back and having success. So I asked him his thoughts on this, and his stance is that he kind of feels once you're a pro, you're always a pro. And he's just kind of like, especially for guys that have had success on web or PGA Tour events or anything like that. And his feeling is that he would have a really tough time getting motivated to play maybe amateur golf after being a professional previously. So,
right.
Some of his questions are, with your professional background, do you feel that you're kind of on an equal playing ground against some of the amateurs that you've played against that have had, the full-time jobs after they graduated college? And then also, how do you get motivated for these events, knowing that you're not playing for money, it's not your livelihood. And, if you shoot 67, 77, whatever you shoot, it's not your livelihood.
My situation is a little bit unique for that. And for both parts of those questions, part one there is, for me, the biggest tournament I played in as a professional was a mini tour event, or maybe obviously you might argue it was Q School. And so having never made it to, the web.com or a PGA Tour event or a European Tour event, whatever it is, I didn't quite enjoy. It doesn't even sound like the success that Greg might have. And so for me, I felt like there was still a lot to prove at the amateur level, to be honest with you. And so when I went back and got my amateur status, I kind of felt like I had a lot to prove kind of to myself. And so that ties into the second answer. How do you get motivated? There's still a lot to play for. Anytime there's major championships available with a win, like there are at the USAM and the US Mid Amateur, that's plenty of motivation for me.
Sure.
And then obviously too, there's a game even within the amateur game. I mean, there are levels to amateur golf. I'm fortunate after having won last September that I'm able to play in all the best tournaments. And so if you're not playing in the best tournaments, it should be kind of fun to see if you can play well enough to get invited to those, because there is a big difference between playing in maybe your state am, and playing in the Sunny Hannah Amateur, for example. They're a lot of fun to go play. They're great golf courses. The competition's really good. I understand where he's coming from. If you shoot 67 or 77, there's no money on the line. But, I just think, and again, for me, it's a little different because I do still harbor some thoughts of possibly being a pro again. And so there's that element too. But for a guy like that, I think, it's still fun to play the best tournaments, even if it is at the amateur level. It's more fun, like I said, to go play the Northeast Am than it is maybe to play, the North Carolina Amateur or something.
Sure. Yeah.
So that would kind of be my response there.
Well, I have just a couple ones, and then we'll let you go. I'm sure you got to get out there and practice a little bit today. You can't just talk to me all day about golf. But I forgot to ask you this question around the Masters.
Okay.
If I'm correct, every player gets 8 free tickets and then the opportunity to purchase 4 more. Is that correct?
That's right. That's correct.
How hard was that to figure out who gets the Masters tickets?
Harder than probably you even think.
I mean, first the tee shot off the first tee, or telling the 13th person that they're not going to the Masters.
Yeah. Oh boy, what a great.
Who was the 13th person? No, I'm kidding. No.
It's tough. It's not quite to the level of like, there's cousins you've never heard of,
right.
But it's close to that. But I would say, probably telling people that they can't, that I'm just out of tickets, it was harder because I don't do that as often as hitting a first tee shot.
Right. But that had to just be like terrible, because I mean, I'm sure you got the the really close family members. I mean, can I ask who got the tickets, or do you want to keep?
Yeah, it was all family.
Right.
Monday and Tuesday I had, some friends back from high school, college, etc.
Right.
But once Wednesday rolled around, it was pretty easy to put together 12 family members. So,
nice.
That's pretty much what it was. And even at that point, we did a couple rental houses in Augusta because we had close to 15 people, between my caddy and his father was along for the whole week. And then the rest was family. And so, there were days even where I had a couple family members that were on the sidelines watching on TV. So, and at that point, that some of the people, unfortunately, that you only have 12 tickets.
Yeah,
I mean, you just outlined it. And so you can't, everybody from your hometown can't come.
No. And you actually need to focus on golf, not focus on, someone saying, "Hey, where's my ticket?" So
my wife stepped in big on that.
Oh, I was just going to say, like, just pawn that off on the wife and just, I'm playing this week. Talk to the wife. Yeah,
right.
No, that's perfect. Well, I want to ask you, this is a tough one, but you win the US Mid-Am. You're exempt into the next 10 US Mid-Ams for the next 10 years. If you remain an amateur, you got basically an annual chance to win, the most competitive mid-amateur tournament in the world. And if you can make it to match play and get on a magical run, and you find yourself back at the Masters, back in the U.S. Open. So in your mind, what is the most likely path for you to return to the U.S. Open and return to the Masters? Staying as an amateur or turning professional? I told you it was a dirty question. I told you
it is, but it's. I mean, obviously, it's an excellent one. What I would say, it's funny because I've talked to a few guys about something similar to this, and I think Tiger's impact on the game is so deep, and it even reaches some areas that you might not think conventionally. And one of those is he made it so popular. He brought in a lot of guys that might have played a different sport that decided to play golf. That's certainly true. I think, what he did for purses also brought in so many more guys. I mean, obviously the amount of money that you can make if you're successful as a pro, it's attractive for a lot of people, marginal players as well. And so what you have is over the last decade or so is you have a lot of guys that, they've turned pro, they've gone out. Maybe the best they've done is play a bunch of mini tour golf. Right.
Sure.
And you're going to see this exodus of players from the professional ranks, decide to get their amateur status back. And so, whereas maybe 10 or 15 years ago, the field at the U.S. mid-amateur was mostly made up, or even, if it was halfway made up of guys that were your classic mid-amateur, right? They were a doctor in town or they did whatever they did. And they played golf kind of in their downtime. I think what you're going to see, and you're already seeing it, I don't know what the fact is on the quarterfinals, for example, last year, but I know there were multiple reinstated amateurs that made deep runs in Charlotte. And so I think that winning that tournament with every year that goes by, winning the mid-amateur is going to be more and more difficult.
Yeah.
Just from the standpoint that you're getting guys that have played professional golf or whatever it is, guys that are just better. And when you dangle the opportunity to play in a couple majors, you're going to get guys that really prepare for that tournament. May not be able to prepare for it like a professional, but they'll do their version of that. And so, to answer the question, I think, it's important to say that I think winning a mid-amateur is going to be, more difficult as the years go by. But I would still say, picking that tournament off is probably easier than winning a PGA Tour event.
Yeah.
And so I would say remaining amateur has to be the best kind of opportunity to get back to those tournaments.
I don't necessarily know how I would feel on this, or if I actually have thought it completely through, but I'll throw it out there. What if Augusta National said, the U.S. mid-amateur champion is going to get an invite to the Masters, but there is a certain level of professional experience that if they've had, they are not going to get the invite. I don't know if that would ever happen. I don't know what that number would be. But do you think if they instituted anything like that, that would really change kind of the thought process? Because knowing that, hey, I played 6 or 7 years on a mini tour, or I played on the web 1 year, I did such and such, and you knew before signing up for the U.S. Mid-Am that if you won it, you would not be getting the invite. Do you think that would prevent? Do you think that would have any kind of a change in the participation of that tournament?
I think it would have to, certainly. I do think, though, if the exemption into the U.S. Open was still there, you wouldn't lose a ton of guys. And then let's also, too, understand how cool it is to be a USGA champion.
Oh, of course.
Just in and of itself, right? And so, there's that, too. I think in order to do something like that, you'd probably have to do it by amount of money earned. I don't know that you could say a certain amount of years of experience. That becomes so arbitrary. So I don't know if they would do something like that. But I think to answer your question, I think, the idea of still winning a USGA event, if you still got into the U.S. Open, I think the participation would still be close to what it is.
Yeah. No, I haven't fully unpacked that thing yet, because I know there's we could talk for hours about the reinstated. If I win a web event my first year out and then do nothing and then get my amateur status back, and then as compared to some guy that's just killing it on a mini tour for like 9 or 10 years and just playing all the, so who knows? Kevin, this has been great. I appreciate you answering my questions and a lot of our listeners' questions. I know they appreciate that. Boy, you're in store for one hell of a year. You've already had a hell of a year playing in the Masters, and it feels like probably things are just going to really ramp up for you throughout the summer. And I know that Walker Cup is on the radar for September at Hoylake. So we wish you the best. Enjoy the summer, and thanks for joining us here at the Back of the Range.
Thanks, Ben. That was a lot of fun. I appreciate it.
And there you have it, another great episode here at the Back of the Range. Special thanks to our guest, the United States Mid-Amateur Champion, Kevin O'Connell, for joining us this week. Don't forget, we are on Facebook, we are on Twitter, we are on Instagram. Follow us there at the Back of the Range podcast. I'm out of here, heading to Casa de Campo, but we'll see you next week for another episode here at the Back of the Range.